Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Business Builder webinar. My name is Justine Paradiso. I am the Marketing and Programs Manager with the Dubuque Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for attending this morning. On behalf of myself, the Chamber team, our Board Chair, Darren Harmon, we are excited to have you all here today. Before we begin, I would like to thank our ultimate presenting sponsors who make this possible: Medical Associates, MidWestOne Bank, Q Casino, and TH Media. A virtual round of applause for them wherever you are. A reminder that you have any questions today, please feel free to put that in the chat function and we will get those answered for you during or after the presentation. Also, we'll have some polling questions throughout the presentation that you can type your answers into the chat there. So just a reminder that you can send messages that way. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Justine Bemis, who is the AML Fraud Service Manager for MidWestOne Bank. She has been with the bank since 1997, and during her tenure has been a leader in the retail division, operations manager, as well as the AML fraud and compliance areas of the bank. Justine is passionate about helping customers across the MidWestOne markets to understand how to protect themselves and their businesses from fraud such as identity theft, business email scams, account takeover, and all other types of scams. This fulfills the Midwest principle of taking good care of our customers and those who should be. In addition to her role at MidWestOne Bank, Justine is on the pastoral staff at the Journey Church in Dubuque and is an active member with other nonprofits in the tri-state area, such as Stonehill Benevolent Foundation Board Vice Chair, President-elect for Women's Leadership Network of Dubuque, and the Dubuque Relay for Life Leadership Team. Please give a warm chamber welcome to Justine Bemis. I love saying Justine, you know, it's the best name in the world.
It is the best name in the world. First time this has ever happened in my whole life. And Justine is Justine.
I love it.
I love it too. All right.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity to share some great tips, hopefully this morning, that will protect both your business and your personal financial information. And I'm going to share some resources with you this morning. So I hope to share some information that you're going to find helpful and that you can share with others within your organization and also with your family. So we are going to start out by looking at some common fraud schemes that impact businesses. And I'm going to provide some tips and best practices as I share the information this morning. So my first tip for you this morning is this: be extremely cautious when opening and responding to emails. Always be careful and extremely cautious when clicking on any attachments or links contained in an email. So we're going to start out this morning by looking at business email compromise, or in our industry, we call that BEC. The FBI defines business email compromise, or BEC, as a sophisticated scam targeting businesses working with foreign and domestic suppliers and businesses that regularly perform wire transfer payments. This type of scam was formerly known as the man in the email scams. These schemes compromise official business email accounts to conduct unauthorized fund transfers. According to the FBI, here's some statistics for you this morning. In 2020, 19,369 business email compromise complaints were submitted, excuse me, with adjusted losses of over 1.8 billion. Yes, that's billion with a B. And as you can see on the screen, the average loss was over $80,000 to the complainant, to the victim, if you will. It is also important to note this does not account for the number of incidents that were not reported, which is very common, unfortunately. BEC, or business email compromise, is a sophisticated scam targeting both businesses and individuals that perform, again, those wire transfers and ACH transfers. So let's take a few minutes and discuss how these scams work this morning. So business email scams often begin with an attacker compromising the email or a system of a business's executive or the leader in the company. They're looking for that person with the control, and then the attacker, they compromise that individual's email. The fraudsters will hack into their business email account, or any publicly listed personal email is important to know as well. And this is usually done by using keylogger malware or phishing methods. And it's where the attackers create a domain that's similar to the company they're targeting and the company that they've spoofed, or a spoofed email that tricks the target into providing account details. After the fraudsters take a season and they monitor the compromised email account, The fraudster will then determine who initiates the wires or potentially ACHs, and also who requests them within the organization. The perpetrators will often perform a fair amount of research on the company, looking for that individual that has, maybe that company that has a change in the C-suite, or maybe they've had that company where the executives might be traveling. And they use these as opportunities to execute their schemes. So there are generally 5 types of business email compromise that we see in the industry. And we're going to take a few minutes to look this morning at each of those different types of compromises. Probably the most common scheme that we see is referred to as the bogus invoice scheme, or sometimes it's called the supplier swindle. This fraud usually involves a business that has an established relationship with a specific supplier or vendor. The fraudster poses as a trusted member or an employee of the supplier or the vendor, and then sends an email asking the victim employee to wire funds for an invoice payment to an alternative fraudulent account via that spoofed email. So my email account, I send this email off, I'm the fraudster, and I say, my account number has changed and I've changed banks, and now you need to send that wire to this bank at this new account number. Millions of dollars are lost to this fraud by businesses every year. So as you can see on the slide, the steps involved in this bogus invoice scheme are things like this. So it starts out with the criminal compromising an employee's email. It starts out with that first step. Secondly, that compromised account is then used to send notifications to the customers. So the cyber criminal compromises the employee's email, and then that compromised account is used to send notifications to the customers. And then the victim employee receives that, opens it, acts on it, and sends that payment to the monies are transferred to the cyber criminal's account, and then the bad guy gets his money. Again, billions of dollars are lost through this type of scheme every year. So that's our first type of this BEC compromise. The second one that we see often is a CEO compromise scam. In this version, the fraudsters identify themselves as high-level executives, the CFO, the CEO, the comptroller of a company, or even sometimes we see they pose as lawyers or other legal representatives. And they say, well, we're handling confidential or time-sensitive matters, and I need you to take care of this for me right away. And they're looking to get that wire initiated to an account, again, that the fraudsters control. In some cases, the fraudulent request for the wire transfer is sent directly to the financial institution. So sometimes those fraudulent emails will come to the bank itself. So it comes to us at MidWestOne Bank, and it will say, send money on behalf of my company needs this money sent to this vendor right away. Can you take care of that for me? And again, and sometimes it's financial institutions will fall victim for those as well. Again, the scam really relies on that urgency. They're looking to get those monies moved quickly and get that money out of the bank and into the fraudster's account. Again, this scam is known as the CEO fraud or business executive scam. And again, this type of fraud results in massive losses to businesses. In all of these cases, when the monies are gone, they are always gone. And in this case, you can see on the slide, again, that cyber criminal in this case, he poses as a company executive, the CEO or the CFO, and emails someone within the finance department of the organization. The finance department sees that and says, oh, my president of my company needs me to send this money. I better do it right away. They send it off, and the cyber criminals get their money. Like the other 2 versions we talked about this morning already, in an account compromise scam, an email account of an employee is hacked and is then used to make requests for invoice payments to fraudsters, for fraudsters into their bank-controlled accounts. So in this case, what happens is messages are sent to multiple vendors identified from the employee's contact list. The fraudsters, again, they take time and do their homework. The businesses may not become aware of the scheme until all of a sudden their vendors start to follow up for the status of their payment. And generally at this point, what we find is the funds are gone. The company will say, wait, I paid that invoice. Well, we paid it to the fraudster and sent it to the actual vendor. So in this case, you can see on the slide, the compromised employee account is used to request a payment. The internal employee receives that and they say, oh, I better send this money off right away. And I send it to my vendor. And then the cyber criminal receives his money. An attorney impersonation is the next one we're going to look at. And in this type of scam, the cyber criminal contacts either the employees or in some cases the CEO of a company and identifies themselves as lawyers or representatives of law firms, claiming to be handled confidential and most often what we see as time-sensitive matters on behalf of the business or their customers. This contact is typically made by the email scam again, and the fraudsters pressure the contacted party into acting quickly and secretly in handling the transfer of funds. Pressure is a consistent tactic of these scammers. They're looking to put that pressure on. It's secretive, it's urgent, and we need you to move those monies. And then lastly, we have data compromise. This scheme is a little bit different because it involves the email of a role-specific employee. Generally, what we see in this type of a situation is that someone may be in the human resources department of your company, and that employee is being attacked or compromised. And again, the fraudsters are looking for them to send this request of information. But in this case, instead of asking for money, they're looking for personally identifiable information. We call that in our industry PII. Of other employees and executives of the company, such as payroll or W-2 data. So again, in this case, the fraudsters aren't necessarily looking for money. They're looking for something equally as valuable. They're looking for information. This can therefore serve as a jumping off point for more damaging business email compromise attacks against the company itself, or sometimes what we see is they're looking for that information on the employees, and then the fraudsters will perform identity theft. So they're looking for that information. The scam mostly counts on social engineering to be successful in this case, and typically doesn't need a sophisticated system of penetration. Unlike phishing scams, the emails used in business email scams are not mass emailed. Instead, they're sent to one specific employee that they know has the information. Again, in this case, the cyber criminals, if you see on the slide there, they're looking for that compromise of that employee email. The compromised account is used to send it off to someone in that specific role base, that person with the information, if you will. And then that information is then sent to the cyber criminals, and then the criminals have what they need to do further compromise attacks, whether that will be on the businesses or on the individuals. So a lot of information about business email compromise. It's such a big topic, and it happens so frequently, it makes me a little sad. So how can you protect your company from becoming a victim of one of these types of schemes? That's probably what you're thinking. Well, it starts off with education and awareness. Education, education, education. Be sure your staff are aware of these scams and that you and your organization have the right tools in place to detect these attacks should one occur. Be sure to train your staff to meticulously check addresses on emails, the subject lines of emails, and the body of any emails for anything that looks odd or unusual. Sometimes when we see these compromised emails that we get an opportunity to review, you'll see spelling errors, you'll see grammatical errors, you'll see things where capitalization errors, if you will, or just the wording itself, back to the grammatical piece, just doesn't sound quite right? So train your staff to look for those types of things. Also train your staff to make sure that they think before they click. Validate any link in any unfamiliar email before you click on it. And then lastly, it's important to make sure that you avoid using two things. You avoid using any free web-based email for your business purposes. Always use a trusted vendor. And then make sure that any unsolicited emails are just going right into your spam or your junk. So I'm going to take a pause from sharing this morning, and I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to let us have some interaction this morning. So my first polling question, and I think what we're going to do, Justine, is we're going to let them put that right in the chat, if I remember correctly. So my first business email compromise
that just popped up.
Okay, perfect. So the first question I have is, has your business ever experienced a business email compromise situation? And it's a yes or no. So if you'd be willing to share, yes or no, you've experienced this.
Looks like we've got 75% of everybody voted, and we've got 56% who say no, 44 who say yes.
Okay, so it happens, right? We do see it. And for those of you that answered yes, you know that the challenge that can be, it can be difficult. First of all, there's losses oftentimes. And secondly, it's the fear that it's going to happen again. And then there's the concern of how did this happen? And you have to walk through all of that triage, if you will. So hopefully some of what I've shared with you this morning, for those of you that haven't had that, you were able to go back and take some tips and tricks and make sure that you get all the right places and things into place so it doesn't happen, so that you don't become a victim. So thanks for everyone for the answer to that and interacted with that polling question. My second polling question is this. So have you trained your employees on this topic? So, you know, even if you, so for those of you that have been victims, I'm hoping that the answer is going to be yes, that you took that as an opportunity to learn, to develop your staff, to put the right systems in place to protect yourself. But for those of you that haven't been a victim, the larger group, thankfully, have you trained your employees on this topic? So Justine, what are we seeing there?
With most of the votes in, we're about 70% yes and 30% no.
Okay. Well, that makes me really happy. 70% is actually pretty good. That's a little higher than the industry standard. So great job for all of you that have done that. And for those of you that 30% that haven't, you know, if you just, there's industry resources for you. There's all kinds of information you can find if you go to the FTC. And we're going to talk about some resources as we get further in the presentation this morning. But just know if you haven't done that, your financial institution can probably provide you with some great information, or again, we'll share some resources that you can do some research on your own, or again, your industry probably has information for you as well. So thanks for participating this morning, and that was some great information. So the next thing we're going to look at here is tip number 2. So we're going to move away from business email compromise and kind of switch gears a little bit. My next tip number 2 for you this morning is ensure that your online banking information and all associated access is secure. So you're probably thinking, well, Justine, how do I do that? Well, I've got some tips for you this morning, and we've got them on the screen there. The first one is, excuse me, be sure to protect and secure all of your online banking passwords and any associated credentials. Make sure that you're going through the area of your business where the online banking occurs, your finance department, your accounts payable, that whatever area it happens in. Make sure there's no passwords or user IDs written on sticky notes and posted. Look around the room. Is there anything that would be an opportunity for someone that shouldn't have access to that to gain access? So make sure that you're looking for that. It seems pretty simple and basic, but it's always good to have that reminder because it still does happen. The second one is be sure to institute the appropriate role-based online banking separation of duties. So if you have ACH capability when you're online banking or wires access through your online banking, make sure you've got dual roles. You've got someone that can create that online banking template, or I'm sorry, that wire transfer template, and then someone else that reviews that wire activity before it goes out, and again, those types of things. And that kind of takes into the second one or the third one there on the screen. Make sure that you've got those secondary reviews and proper training for those employees with the ability to send out funds, again, wire and ACH. Make sure that there's secondary reviews. Make sure that those employees' roles are very clearly defined, and make sure you've got all of that set up within your online banking application. The next one is use only a trusted and secure firewall for your internet connection. Again, it probably seems like should be a give me, but it's important to make sure that we say it, as well as these next couple. Make sure that you're installing and using and regularly updating all of your anti-malware, antivirus, anti-spyware software on every computer in your business. Sometimes what we find and what we hear when I hear horror stories from the FBI or other agencies is it was that one computer they forgot to update is where the fraudsters got access to the network, right? So make sure that you're doing every computer, even that one that maybe hasn't been used in a while. Make sure if it's on the network that it's getting updated. And then lastly, make sure that you're always downloading and installing software updates as soon as they become available. I'm not an IT expert, but I know all of your businesses probably have that individual within your organization. So make sure that you're thinking about things and look these last few topics and looking at them. So now that brings us to tip number 3 on the business side. Check fraud still occurs every day. Make sure you're protecting yourselves. So on the screen, we have some great ways to ensure that you and your business don't become a victim of check fraud. The first one, again, seems pretty basic, seems pretty easy, but sometimes this is where the gap happens. Make sure you're securing and protecting your business check inventory. And also, it's important to make sure that you're limiting who within your organization has access to that inventory. Is that check stock inventory secure? Is it in a place where only the appropriate individuals within your organization have access to that? And then enroll in your financial institution's positive pay service. This is a fraud mitigation tool, and we're going to spend a little time on the next slide looking at this in a little bit more detail. And then thirdly, make sure that that mailbox for your business is monitored. If it's a P.O. box, make sure that it's emptied on a frequent basis, that mail's not piling up. Fraudsters love mail that's being unattended, so make sure you're looking at that as well. So let's look a little deeper at this topic of positive pay. So positive pay is a solution that provides an effective and practical business opportunity that helps for you to guard against check and even ACH fraud. So positive pay is a great tool. Positive pay provides protection on a daily basis against losses due to fraudulent payments and the presentation of unauthorized checks. So some of the benefits of the positive pay solution are as follows, and you have the boxes on your screen there. And the first one is it secures your assets. The positive pay will help you to detect suspicious activity, and it also reduces the risk of financial loss, and it safeguards your customers' reputation. So your company isn't the victim of check fraud, and then you have to do due diligence with your vendors that might have received fraudulent payments, or other people in the community that might have got a fraudulent check. So it safeguards your reputation. Secondly, it increases control. So positive pay enhances the visibility of the check and ACH activity that's happening within your business lines. If you want to know where your money is going, positive pay can help you to identify that. It can also solidify internal controls and ensures daily reviews. Back to those second set of eyes I talked about a few minutes ago, positive pay will help you to do that. And it reinforces audit trails. Again, you can know where your finances are going, know where your assets are going. You can know who your vendors are and know where your audit trails are, and make sure that you're looking at those. Thirdly, positive pay can increase efficiencies, which we all want, right, for our businesses. It can minimize the disruption to business operations when it can help the bad things not to happen, the fraud not to occur, and that minimizes those disruptions. It can simplify your account reconciliation process. It can help automate your accounts payable workflow, and it can save time by reviewing only item exceptions that you deem necessary. So positive pay and ACH aren't requiring you to look at every single item and every single ACH. You can choose what those thresholds look like. And then lastly, the nice thing about positive pay is it integrates with most online banking platforms. Most financial institutions provide a positive pay service. However, the functionality might vary institution to institution. So talk with your financial advisor at your institution and find out what yours looks like and how you can get access to it. So my next polling question, Justine, is, does your business currently use a positive pay service? And again, this is a yes and no. Let's see what our percentage out there in our audience looks like. So I'll give you a few minutes to answer this question. Do you use positive pay or not? What are we seeing, Justine?
We've got about 60% of the votes in. We've got 25% saying yes and 75% saying no.
Okay. Well, congratulations to the 25% that are using it. And for the 75% that aren't, I would just encourage you to talk to your financial banker, your commercial banker at your financial institution, and just ask about positive pay. It may not be the right fit for your organization, but it might be the right fit, right? And again, it's a great fraud mitigation tool that I needed to make sure that we talked about this morning to make sure you all have that awareness. And again, I don't know of a financial institution in our market that doesn't offer it. So again, talk to your banker. Okay, so tip number 4 on the business side, again, switching gears, is be aware of fraud related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we all know, thankfully, we're finally starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel in this pandemic. But I've got to tell you, folks, the fraud related to it is kind of ramping up. I think the fraudsters kind of know that their day in the sun is about over, so they're really busy right now. So I have some tips for you this morning, and some things I wanted to share with you related to that pandemic fraud, especially as it relates to the business side. So unemployment fraud related to large numbers of the individuals who were collecting these benefits is still occurring. Be sure to warn your employees to immediately report if they become the victim of this type of scam. They should report the incidents of this fraud to the 3 major credit bureaus, and you as your employer will also need to report the fraud as well. I can tell you I was a victim of this type of fraud. I was really surprised. I got the notification from my HR department, and then I got something from the employment agencies or the Iowa division. Workforce Development reached out to me and said I was a victim, and it was a challenge to walk through that. We've put together some resources that we can share with employees, so to share with their customers. So make sure as an employer that you're helping your employees to know, give them an informational piece about how they can protect themselves against this fraud. Secondly, your HR department should send those types of reminders. We would encourage you to do that. Periodically remind your staff to be cautious and on the lookout for those email compromises that we talked about earlier. Maybe give them 3 or 4 bullet points to kind of watch out for. Don't, think before you click and those kinds of things. Watch out for those grammatic errors and the things I talked about earlier. And HR should also remind your employees to be aware of protecting their personal information so they don't become the victim of fraud. They're looking at your HR folks as kind of being those experts in those areas, right? PPP and SBA fraud is a full-time job that I and my team are working on right now. Gosh, these fraudsters are busy, and the financial industry continues to see fraud related to these 2 types of schemes, the PPP and the SBA loans. On the side for your business, how you can protect yourself is we're seeing some businesses get attacked by this. If you would get a bill from an SBA or Small Business Administration for a loan that you didn't apply for, it's likely that an identity thief might have applied for that loan using your personal or your business's information. The SBA has guidance about how to report this fraud, and the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, has some tips to help you clear up any credit problems that this might cause to your business or to your personal finances. And the link will be included in the presentation that we mentioned earlier when we provide those resources, and we'll provide those at the end of today's presentation. So it's vital to learn how to spot scams against businesses. And so again, some of those resources that you've heard me mention a few times this morning are on the slide. But the first one I meant to mention is industry resources. We would encourage you to talk to the colleagues in your respective industry about what they're experiencing and watch for any publications from your industry leaders on fraud. Almost every type of industry has publications on fraud, and they have those fraud experts in your field. So make sure that you're watching for those things. Scammers continue to target businesses with fake check scams, utility scams, and the other scams I mentioned this morning. But knowing how these scams work can really help you to avoid them. That's a lot of the key, knowing how they work. So some resources that as I mentioned, the Federal Trade Commission or the FTC has great information to help protect your business and your personal information. And by going to the Federal Trade Commission website, you can obtain that. ftc.gov/small business will provide you with some great tools and resources. I was out there preparing for this presentation and found some amazing information out there. So feel free to jump and look at that, jump onto that site. You can also sign up to receive the business blog from the FTC called business.ftc.gov/blog. Looks like a great resource. And then lastly, it's important to report scams if your business would become a victim. And you can do that at the ftc.gov/complaint, and your financial institution can help you walk through that if unfortunately you would become a victim. God forbid. So scammers have lots of tricks to get your business's money, and there's nothing they won't try. But knowing how the scams work can help you avoid them and help protect you and your business. So I'm going to take a pause for just a minute, and we're going to see if we have any questions on the business fraud side before we move into the personal fraud. So we'll just open it up. If you have a question, you can throw that in the chat, and I will do my very best to answer. If I don't have an answer, I will take it away, and we'll get that back to you with the follow-up information. So Justine, do we have any questions in the chat?
Nothing coming in currently. I just put something in the chat for people to respond to.
Okay. Well, maybe what we'll do is we'll keep moving, if that's okay with you, Justine, and then we can maybe circle back to some questions at the end. Does that sound good?
Sounds perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, so if you have a question on any of the fraud that we talk about this morning, just throw that in the chat and we'll come to those questions at the end. But now we're going to switch gears and we're going to discuss some of the most prevalent scams we see on the personal side. And we're going to, again, provide you some additional tips that you can use to protect yourself and those you love from falling victim to these scams. So one of the most common personal frauds we're currently seeing is this idea of account takeover. Excuse me. This is where fraudsters will engage with the potential victim by sending an email or making a phone call to the individual with the intent of tricking them into allowing them access to their computer or their mobile device, and ultimately into sending them money. We know we're all getting these crazy scam calls all the time. Well, it's just ramping up is all I can say. This fraud can be done by the scammer by telling the potential victim they are due a refund for a purchase or a service, such as needing tech support from Microsoft, or a refund from an Amazon purchase. The scammer pretends to offer assistance, but actually they're looking to gain access to the victim's computer and mobile device. Once they've engaged with the victim and gained access to that device, the scammers then can move, what we oftentimes see happen is they'll move money from one of the victim's accounts to the other. So they've remoted in, they've taken over the workstation or the phone, and they begin to work their scam. And often, as I said, what we see them do is they'll move monies from one of the victim's accounts to another. At this point, once they've done this, the scammer then tells the victim, oh, this was a horrible mistake, and oh, I meant to give you a $180 refund, but I put in $18,000 instead, and I'm gonna lose my job. And they play on the victim's sympathies, and they trick them into repaying the overpayment amount, either by wire transfer, purchasing gift cards, or sometimes simply sending the fraudsters the cash. And that really does happen. We see individuals that will actually withdraw the cash from their account and give it to the fraudsters. So personal tip number one is don't answer these calls or engage with these individuals. So Microsoft, the first bullet you have on your slide there, will never proactively reach out to you to provide unsolicited PC or technical support. They're just not going to do that. If you or someone you care about would ever receive a phone call claiming to be someone from Microsoft, or see a pop-up window on their PC or their television with a warning message and a phone number to call to get their issue fixed and it's urgent, it's always better to be safe instead of sorry. Never click on any of these links. Don't answer the phone call or provide any information to the individual on the phone. In addition, never call any phone numbers provided in the error message. Don't call these individuals. Real Microsoft support, it will never provide you a phone number to call them. It just won't happen. That's not how their fraud department works or their support area. In addition, scammers are calling people and using the names of two companies that everybody knows that you see on your screen, Apple and Amazon. And they're trying to rip off people. They're trying to get at their money. So here's what you need to know about these scams. In one version of the scam, the victim will get a call and a recorded message says that it's from Amazon. The message says there's something wrong with your account. It could be maybe they're saying a suspicious purchase or a lost package or an order that for some reason they can't fulfill. In another twist in the scam, you get a recorded message that says there's been suspicious activity on your Apple iCloud account. And in fact, they say your account may have been breached. In both of these scenarios, the scammers say you can conveniently press 1 to speak with someone, how nice of them, right? To give you support. Or they might give you a phone number to call. Don't do either one. It's a scam. They're trying to steal your personal information, like your account number, your password, your credit card number, and they are ultimately trying to get your money. They're trying to get at your funds. So just make sure that you share this information. There's nothing secretive here or proprietary. We really want you to share this information with your family, with your friends, to make sure folks know about these scams and just don't fall for them. Personal tip number 2 that I have for you this morning is protect those you care about. Protect those you care about. All of us have those people in our lives we love and care about who can be vulnerable to scammers' tactics. We have moms, dads, grandparents, an elderly aunt, our sweet neighbor lady that has no family, just to name a few. And we need to watch out for each other and help protect these vulnerable adults, this population that just happens to be more vulnerable just by their nature. According to the FBI, each year, millions of elderly Americans fall victim to some type of financial fraud or confidence scheme. And some of these types of scams include romance, lottery, sweepstakes, just to name a few. Criminals will work with these targets and they gain their trust. I was talking with the victim just the other day and she was saying, oh, he was so nice on the phone and he complimented me and he said, wow, you sound just like my grandma and I miss my grandma so much. So these fraudsters are really good at what they do, and they work to gain the target's trust, and they might communicate with them directly by a phone or through email or directly through their television and radio. We're starting to hear that as well. Once successful, once they've gotten the trust of the individual, the scammers are likely to keep a scam going because the prospect of significant financial gain. Unfortunately, seniors are often targeted because they tend to be very trusting, and also because they usually have the financial means. They will own a home, they have really great credit, they will have savings, all of which make them attractive to scammers. And additionally, so what we oftentimes find is seniors might be less inclined to report fraud because either they don't know how, or they might be really ashamed and embarrassed that they fell victim to it. And they also, thirdly, might be concerned that their relatives will lose confidence in their abilities to manage their personal financial affairs. When an elderly victim does report a crime, we oftentimes see that they're so flustered by the whole process and the whole interaction that they're unable to supply any detailed information to investigators. So that can make it a challenge as well. With the elderly population growing and seniors racking up more than $3 billion in losses annually, elder fraud is likely to continue to be a growing problem. Again, we just ask this last tip was, be sure that you protect those you care about. This fraud can happen to anyone in any family. So make sure that you're taking care of those you care about. Personal tip number 3 is be cautious when looking for romance on social media. So we know that there are those times when romance can be successful on social media. I've heard about those, and I know people personally that have had it be really successful. But romance scams is another area where we've seen an increase during this time of the pandemic. People are lonely, they're isolated, and they're looking for connections. And this can cause people to connect with those that are looking to do them harm. Generally, financial harm is what we see. But sometimes we see that these individuals are actually looking to do physical harm as well. Once the victim thinks they have found their true love, what we find is the beautiful young girlfriend is actually a middle-aged man. Fraudsters are very convincing. And we oftentimes have a very hard time convincing the victims that the activity is actually fraud and to discontinue engaging with that scammer. Criminals pose as interested romantic partners on social media or dating websites to capitalize on the elderly and other victims who desire to look for that companionship. We often see the fraudsters looking for funds to be sent to them by wire or by providing the card information on prepaid cards. What we'll sometimes see is the fraudsters will just let this romance kind of grow and build, and then all of a sudden, now I need money. Now I have this urgent need, and I need to buy a car, or I need to get from another country to the United States or whatever, and can you financially help me? Be sure to remind folks to move slowly and cautiously whenever dating online. It can certainly end happily, as I said before, in some situations, but it's important to make sure that you navigate with caution if you're walking into that arena. So if you believe your business or you personally or someone you know has been the victim of fraud, it's really important to report the fraud. Report the fraud. Contact your financial institution to report that. In addition, you can file a complaint with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center at ic3.gov. So there's another resource for you this morning. And when you're reporting a scam, when you call your financial institution or you're contacting the FTC directly and reporting that scam, it's important to give them some specific information. They're going to be looking for, and that's regardless of the dollar amount, large losses, large scams, and small scams. They're looking for the names of the scammer or the companies. They're looking for dates of contact, the method that they communicated with you, phone numbers, email addresses, IP addresses, websites, those types of things. They're looking for the method of payment that you requested. They're looking for where you may have sent the funds, such as the wire transfer destination, prepaid cards, where you purchased them, and any additional information you might have on those. And then the descriptions of your interactions with the scammers and any instructions you were given. And I would just end with this on this slide. Don't be afraid to report. There's no shame in it. Their victims come from all walks of life. Every type of business can be a victim. So just make sure that you report so the law enforcement can do their job. And so now I have some reminders for you on the fraud side, and this is both personal and business, so they're kind of mixed in here together. So the first one I want to encourage you is just the reminders is keep your eye on your information. Make sure that you're opening up those credit card, those bank statements. Make sure that you're looking at those. Make sure that you're balancing them every month. Don't let those statements, those credit cards and other statements sit by the wayside and not get that review. Make sure you're looking at those on at least once a month. Be very careful when accessing public Wi-Fi. I'm assuming this audience all knows this, but it's important to make sure that we verbalize it. Make sure that we're not using public Wi-Fi, and especially don't access whether it's your personal or your business financial data by any type of public Wi-Fi. That is really dangerous. Don't download any programs on your personal or business devices that you didn't initiate. Watch for those pop-ups. If you're using any kind of P2P service, there's oftentimes pop-ups that might come up. Make sure that you're not clicking on any of those links that could install any kind of malware on your device. This is one of my favorite sayings on the next slide here. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Fraudsters are professional. I can't stress that enough. They know what they're doing and they do their research, and they're looking to trick individuals. That's what they're looking to do. So we just don't want that to be you, right? So make sure if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Make sure that you're asking questions, slowing transactions down, and doing your due diligence. Block unsolicited calls. I know most of us probably already do that, but I just wanted to make sure we said it this morning. Don't engage with those calls. Remind your family, especially again, those vulnerable adults, don't answer those phone calls, don't engage with them. And if you have engaged, let me know about it so I can help you, right? That kind of a thing. The next bullet we have there is be sure to create unique, strong passwords for any sites or applications that have to do with your financial data. Whenever possible, that last bullet there is use a standalone PC for your online banking, separate from what you do, your other browsing, and possibly your Amazon shopping if you're anything like me. This is a best practice and it can save you a lot of issues and keep your financial data safe. So my last slide here is, again, questions. Do we have any in the chat on the personal or business side, Justine, that we want to look at that I can answer this morning?
None currently, but I just want to say this is a lot of great information. I hope everyone's had their coffee so they can really digest everything that Justine shared with us this morning. This is important no matter what business you're in. We all utilize technology. We utilize email. We all probably have a cell phone. So there's so many different ways that this could happen. So it's just really important to do your due diligence. And when Justine, we really appreciate your expertise in sharing this with us this morning.
Absolutely. Well, you're right, Justine. I know that was a lot of information, and hopefully you're not all feeling too overwhelmed. Again, thank you for the opportunity to share some tips to protect both your business and your personal information. I hope some of what you heard this morning was helpful in some small way. Again, we'll send those resources after today's training. Again, I can't stress enough, help your family members. Make sure you share this information with others. And again, thank you and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much, Justine. Yes, we will make this presentation and those resources available on our website. Also, there will be a recording of this that'll be posted on there as well. So in case there's something you missed that you want to revisit or you want to share this with somebody else on your staff, feel free to do that. Otherwise, you can always get a hold of Justine at MidWestOne Bank if you have any questions, or we can help put you in touch with her. Just another thank you to our ultimate sponsors to make this possible: Medical Associates, MidWestOne Bank, Q Casino, and TH Media. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we will see you at the next Business Builder webinar. Take care, everyone.